Welcome, everyone, to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan. It's Friday, October 22nd, 2021. Just got completed a 23-minute video on the topic of yards per point in college football, specifically the Big Ten this week in Week 8 action, which I kind of like that sub-card quite a bit in the conference. A lot of interesting games, a lot of interesting matchups. Have Ohio State on the irrational exuberance list, meaning that the betting public is going absolutely nuts. They can't get enough of the Buckeyes. And it might be for good reason, actually. It actually might be for good reason. The line movement on Michigan, however, does favor a bet on Northwestern. And I will definitely get to that in just a little bit. I did want to show the golfing for the PGA, which I did not do on Wednesday, unfortunately, for a lot of the guys in the chat room. Truthfully, I did not enter in this event. I just didn't see any opportunity. I just decided to not play this tournament. But I can show you the golfers here that were on the list. There's 18, and we can look kind of independently here and see how the PGA is shaping up here. It looked like, of course, Morikawa shot an unbelievable round yesterday. Actually, Matsuyama, I believe it was. But anyway, let's take a look at the leaderboard here for the Zozo Championship over in Japan. Hideki Matsuyama was the guy that I was referencing, not Morikawa. He shot 64 in round one, shot 68 today. That's 8 under on a par 70 course. Cameron Tringali, I believe he was on our list. Let's see. And I'll slide this over here so we can cross-reference these things. It's Tringali. Yep, there's Tringali. So he was 60%. This is going to make me sick if I realize I should have played it. Where's Matt Wallace? Is he on our list? I don't see him. Okay. Brendan Steele. Let's see. Is he on there? Brendan Todd is. There's Brendan Steele. He was a 60%er. Then we have Joaquin Neiman. I don't think he was on. Yeah, he is. Right there he is. Tommy Fleetwood playing like his old self, and that's good to see, but he was not on our list here. Alex Noren, I'm sure, was not on. I don't remember that name. Sebastian Munoz, no. Iwata. No, I don't think so, right? Actually, Matt Wallace was on the list there. So now I am kind of sick. Matsuyama, Tringali, Wallace, Steele, and Neiman were all on the list, and they're 1 through 5. Wow. And I think that would have actually worked salary-wise, too. I have to check that on DraftKings on the salary, but I know Matt Wallace was not very much. All right, so woulda, shoulda, coulda, you know. What other ones here? Luke List was on the list. He's 2 under, and that's a good score on this course. I mean, it's tied for 14th. It's just Matsuyama just tearing it up. There's Colin Morikawa. He shot 71.68, -1, tied for 20. Even par is tied for 30. I thought it was going to be +1 for the cut, but the way this is going, it might even be higher. Let's see. Well, actually, I don't know if there is a cut in this event. No, there isn't. Yep, there is no cut. So the other names on here, where's Mackenzie Hughes, I wonder? Tied for 14th, -2. So yeah, wow. But it's good that I showed this, because when I do this list, it gives you the opportunity to use these names. And of course, not all these guys are going to make the cut, or I'd be cashing big checks from DraftKings every single week. But you can take this list and then just pick and choose how you wish. You don't have to follow the rankings where Adam Schenk would have been 4 out of 5, Carlos Ortiz 4 out of 5. You don't have to do that. You can take exactly who you want. And in fact, what I'll do next week is send a list out with no bias, meaning my bias, because my bias would be on these golfers. So you would look at the list and it would not have 4 out of 5 or 1 out of 5 for Robert Strebe. And you could pick and choose as you wish to optimize your lineups. And that's what that list is all about. It's an attempt to get someone in the chat room a huge 4-day monetary win. So let's get rid of that now. And we do have a Major League Baseball game going on tonight, so I'll wait for Rob Vino and Tony Finn to join me. We're going to go to probably no later than 5 today. The week went so fast I can't even begin to tell you. I definitely, Max on record says Sox or Stros, and I think I go with the Sox tonight. I actually have a premium bet for $9 over at SportsMemo on the total, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. I like Eovaldi over 3.5 strikeouts, if that's what that is. And I suspect that Hideki has played that course a lot, because he's really showing that he knows how to play on it, and he also knows how to play that terrain. Lanto versus Jones, round 3, I do not have an opinion. And Max and Ray, you're right. I wish I would have had the list too. I didn't play anything. Simply didn't see the opportunity. But if you were on the beginning of the show, I mentioned that on that list is the top 5 right now on day 2. That doesn't mean that would have fit within the $50,000 budget, but it could have substituted with somebody else that is playing even par. There is no cut in this event. I do like Fleetwood. Yeah, I like Fleetwood over Neiman. That's Wyatt Chapman's asking a question there. So I do like that quite a bit. But like you said, it's a roller coaster. So Neiman, when he gets hot, plays incredibly well. But I would think that Neiman's way up there on the board and shot well today. He shot. Well, actually, he didn't. He shot 71 today. He shot 64 yesterday. I might change my mind on that, Wyatt. I thought it was the other way around. Because golfers that play hot, coming off a hot round, more times than not always, will have an average round the following day. So let's see. What I did today was I talked about using the metric yards per point. And if you're in the chat room and you feel like telling me whether you've ever heard of this before or whether you've used it, and if you have used it, better yet. But it's a metric now in college football and especially the NFL, and I'll do that show next week for the NFL. These are the type of shows that are, they call them green shelf. So it may be specific to week 8 of the Big Ten college football season, but it'll be usable and meaningful any week of the college football season moving forward. It's just that the case studies, for lack of a better word, are specific to tomorrow's action in the Big Ten. So I'll show you what I do with it. Yards per point is simply yards, total yards divided by total points, or average yards per game divided by average points scored. And here is an example of the offense in the Big Ten. So you can tell I import a lot into Excel to be able to create these nice looking charts. from the raw database. Let me just get rid of the white comment there, and we'll have a better view of it. So as you can see here, and hopefully you can see, Iowa does rank best in offensive yards per point. A lot of that is because they started, prior to the Penn State game, their average line of scrimmage for the beginning of each drive was the opponent's 39. They feasted off of a lot of turnovers by their opponents, and especially those turnovers were deep in their own territory, giving Iowa an excellent shot at scoring. But as we saw last week, Iowa is not really who we thought they could be or what others thought they were, and got beat pretty handily by Purdue. Purdue has a tough game against Wisconsin, and that is a team that I feel is actually going to start playing up to what we thought. They're pretty much out of it, but doesn't mean that they can't finish strong and get some positive momentum going into the next year. So as you see, let's take Michigan, for example, is 11.44. What that is 11.44 yards is necessary on average to score 1 point on the scoreboard by the Michigan offense. The lower the number, the more efficient the offense becomes. Conversely, a team like Wisconsin, who moves the ball a lot, they dominated Penn State in that game at home in Madison, but they had far too many mental mistakes, penalties, and especially the turnovers killed them. So that is why their metric is so ugly at 18.6. That's where you want your defense to be. You want the opponent to have to go as many yards as possible to average a point on the scoreboard. So I think that Wisconsin actually is in a position where they are going to play pretty well against Purdue. I'm not saying, I haven't decided yet whether that's going to be a play or not. But Wisconsin, see what I do then, we're looking at season to date numbers. So then what I do is I create a 3-game moving average of those numbers of the most recent 3 games, and then compare the difference. So if, for example, if the 3-game average is lower on the offensive yards per point ratio than the seasons, that's a positive trend. And if we get the last game to be even the lowest point of that last 3 games, that's better yet. And what we have with Wisconsin, Wisconsin was 18.7 as you see for the season, and 16.6 over the last 3 games. So that's better. That doesn't sound like much, but on such a small scale, which basically runs from 10, well, really, like you can get down to the 9s and 8s, but very rarely and not sustainable. Up to a range of about 25, being the worst offensive teams in the nation based on yards per point. A drop of 2 is quite a bit. So Wisconsin, 16.6 and then 15.5 last game. That means that game that they played last was the best game based on yards per point that they have played during this 3-game stretch. And it's vastly below their season-to-date average. So that tells me that Wisconsin, almost secretly, because the offense has been bad, is poised to really put on a much, much better offensive performance against the opponents they face down the stretch. Purdue, 3.3 differential. That's taking the defensive metric minus the offensive metric, and the result is 3.3. So that actually means that as a team, they're in the top half of Division I football with 130 teams in it. So they would come in like around 40, 45 in that ranking. But over the last 3 games, minus 1.1 of the last 3. So it's dropping. And the last game for the offensive metric was 19.7, which is terrible. So with that said, Wisconsin here is improving. I'm not saying they're Ohio State, but they're improving based on where their benchmark started. on this season. So you have a road favorite where that's happening and Purdue is regressing, and bang, there you have a play. And this is just one of the techniques I use, and it's also adjusted for strength of schedule. It's also adjusted for field position. The average starting point in the field for each offensive drive is taken into consideration. But mostly the strength of schedule then puts everybody on an even keel. We saw what happened with Coastal Carolina the other night against App State. They had a strength of schedule that was very weak, one of the weakest in the country, and playing up against App State, which was really just a tough schedule for a team like that, because the strength of schedule reading of 30 on my stuff would be just shy of what an SEC team would endure over the course of a season. And that paid dividends for App State, and we did get that one right. So let's take a look at the defensive ones while we're at it as well. So we have this. And defensive metrics are the opposite. So you want the number as high as possible, meaning that it takes the opponent many more yards to score a point than what it takes for the team's offense to score a point. And the bigger that differential is, the better the team is. And that correlates very, very well, especially when I adjust it for field location of starting drives and the strength of schedule. So lo and behold, you won't be surprised that Georgia ranks number 1. But Georgia may be one of the best teams that we have seen in possibly more than 2 decades if they keep this up. They actually have a yards per point differential of 20. And it's absolutely mind-blowing that it could be that wide, which means that they are not just a great defensive team, they're also a very, very good offensive team. So the example would be they, on offense, yards per point somewhere near 10, and in defense is approaching 30. That means the opponent has to gain 30 yards to get a point on the board on average. So that implies a lot of 3 and outs. Just a lot of 3 and outs. That's what that really is reflecting. I haven't seen a differential that high. I'd have to go pretty deep into the database to find out when that happened most recently. And this is, we're talking week 8. We're not talking like the second or third week of the season where it could be an aberration. But Penn State, believe it or not, is second. National yards per point differential at 10. And like I said, it trails Georgia at 20.6. That's 1-2 in the entire nation of 130 teams. That's light years different. You can't even, there's Georgia, and then there's another group of 5 or 6, and then a big drop to the remaining 120 teams in the country. It's remarkable. Penn State's playing Illinois. Penn State 23.5 point favorite. Illinois is regressing. They are the bottom feeder of the Big Ten. To put it in perspective, though, Illinois is the only team in the Big Ten that's slightly below the average Division I team. So they're a quality team. They're just in a monster conference that has 4 teams in the East Division in the top 10, and then 2 others, Iowa and Purdue, in the West Division, ranked in the top 25, with Iowa ranked 11th and Purdue 25. But again, I emphasize this all the time with rankings. They're fun to look at, but there's no way in God's green earth 4 teams from the East Division of the Big Ten are going to finish in the top 10, because they all play each other. And that starts next week with a visit from Penn State at Columbus, Ohio, to take on Ohio State in the big showdown. Excuse me. So that makes it tough to use the rankings for any real purpose. There are games where you can have like an Iowa State that's not ranked be favored by 7 like they are against number 8 Oklahoma State. Implicitly, that would mean that you want to start looking at Iowa State in this game, because If you know anything about football, why would a non-ranked team be favored by 7 points even at home against the number 8 ranked team in the nation? So that's where the rankings get kind of nuts and don't offer any meaning other than pointing out the fact that the betting line is saying that the other team is better. That's where you can draw some value from it. But as you can see here, Penn State has the best defense in the Big Ten, and it was actually by a wider margin than I had thought when I adjusted it for strength of schedule and field position. As you can see, it's a reading of 24.3, which means, again, that's 24 yards on average that an opponent has to gain to put up 1 point on the scoreboard. And that's a pretty darn good number. And I don't know what the Clifford situation is, but I do think that regardless of who plays, Penn State will be able to run the ball probably 80% of the time and possibly hold Illinois to less than 3 points. And that's how I view that one. The other pick that I did for the show was Wisconsin over Purdue, based on what I was just showing you guys and gals, and also Ohio State. In summary, the model for yards per point, strength of schedule, field position, all those metrics tied into one shows Ohio State 6.5 points undervalued based on where the line is now. And who could argue with that? It's scary to take Ohio State minus all those points against Indiana, but Indiana's not playing. They're not the team that we knew last year. And that bias is affecting the marketplace. People are betting Indiana thinking that, that's just too many. And I just have a sneaking suspicion that, this game will be over, certainly maybe at halftime or before the fourth quarter even starts. And we got Rob Vino in the house.
Good afternoon, John.
How are you?
I am good today. Busy
good.
As always.
I'm going to switch my speaker here so I can hear you better. There we go. So, I don't know if you heard what I was saying. I was talking about yards per point, and I think I put everybody to sleep. But it is a metric now that is very useful in identifying the contenders and the pretenders. It definitely points them out. And, it was telling me, and this is just one of the tools I use, that Ohio State is actually 6.5 points undervalued to the line for that game. It also doesn't imply that specifically, but implies that Ohio State, for the next 3 games, it'll take the market the next 3 games to catch up, and so they might be overvalued. Of course, it's not always right. They might be peaking now, but I can't see them stumbling against Indiana. Not in the least. So, you got your beer here on Friday?
You know what? I didn't even go out and get one. I stayed in this office and took care of a couple of things. We just wrapped up WagerTalk College Football Today, or College Football Daily, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And made my way on over. Yeah, that was our good friend Steve Merrill.
Oh, good.
And Dave Koken and myself and Joe hosted. We did 4 games. We did Fresno State, Nevada. We did USC, Notre Dame, LSU, Mississippi, and I'm having a hard time. NC State against Miami of Florida.
Yeah.
Were the 4 that we did. So
that's almost the games that we did on the college football show for SportsMemo TV, actually. But they are the marquee games, so it's not coincidence. I mean, that's what you want to. That's where the greatest interest is in those games. I'm curious to know one of them, though, if you don't mind, the USC Notre Dame game. Did anybody think USC can pull off the upset?
I think I was alone in that boat. I mean, as far as taking 7 points, Steve Merrill made Notre Dame, and it's not to say it's his best bet of the week, but we're obligated to pick one of the 4 that we discuss on the show as a best bet. And Steve took Notre Dame -7. I did not have that game as a best bet, but I do like USC plus the points. So we'll see how that goes. Power ratings that I keep, and it's interesting. This is why you have all kinds of handicappers, and WagerTalk's got a bunch underneath that umbrella, and a bunch of us do keep our own numbers. And Dave Koken, who has, he'd been around a long time. Dave, pretty sharp with his numbers.
Legend.
But he had Notre Dame heavier than 7, and Steve Merrill had Notre Dame 9. And then I came in with Notre Dame only 4.5. So it goes to show you the different adjustments that maybe guys make. Maybe we view things a shade different. Again, power ratings, we don't make a number, play a number. That's not the way it goes. It's make a number, compare it to the number that's up there. And then if there's a big enough difference, go ahead and investigate it and see why there is such a difference. And if you find enough, you go and play. If you don't find enough, you lay off. But that was pretty much where we came up numbers-wise. Steve made points about, and I think we disagreed on a couple of things. He is of the opinion that Notre Dame will make a lot of their offensive production through the air against USC in this game. The USC does not have a great pass defense for sure, but I think my stance was if I'm going to trust one passing game over the other, I'm going to trust the team that does it more and does it better, which is USC in that air raid, right? Notre Dame, I think we've seen, Jack Cohn, the quarterback from Notre Dame, started off the season really well, throwing the ball downfield. And at that point, I think a lot of us thought, wow, Notre Dame's going to have a little bit of explosion on offense this year. But as it turns out, they can't run the football. They've had a difficult time, even though Kyron Williams is one of the, in my estimation, he's an NFL running back, but he just can't find any room to run. And since the Purdue game, and I mean, sometimes it comes across as sour grapes, but the facts are the facts. In that game, Jack Cohn missed. If he didn't miss 3 touchdowns, he missed 4. Notre Dame's receivers were running free in that Purdue secondary. Enough to cause Brian Kelly's visor to hit the ground a few times, to cause Brian Kelly at halftime to single out his offense, leaving points on the field. And at the end of the game, the same thing. So, they're kind of hit or miss, Notre Dame, and we know what college football is, right? Any given Saturday. Maybe Jack Cohn throws for 300 this week. But if I'm going to trust a passing game, thinking that both run defenses are good enough to quiet the offense, the run offenses, then +7, I'm going to trust USC. Each team is off a bye week, right? So they both had plenty of time to prepare. And for a long time, John, I mean, I go way back watching this rivalry into the early 70s. And it was one of those intersectional rivalries that they played every single year in these two teams, and more recent times, the Bush push. And it's kind of lost some luster, but I don't think to the teams. I think the teams both will come out maximum effort, maximum focus. They've had the week off to get ready, so we'll see. But there was a pretty good back and forth. Dave stayed a little bit neutral on the game itself. He said his numbers showed Notre Dame, but his eyes told him USC, and the matchup told him USC. And because he had that conflict, he wouldn't play the game. So Saturday night will tell us. Notre Dame's got a home night game.
Yeah, I like that eye test. I agree with that too. I think they have. I'd be bold enough to say they have the better athletes. USC does across the board. They certainly have offensive weapons that can stretch that defense vertically.
Yeah, and they. I mean, it's the basis of their offense, right? The air raid. We're going to throw it, and Drake London is their top guy, and he'll be in the NFL, but they have other guys as well. And they've run a lot of receivers through that program the last 3 years that we see in the NFL now. So, Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator there, is a Texas Tech guy. He falls off of that Mike Leach air raid tree where we throw the football. And USC tries to run it a little bit, but I think that's more for show. And if you allow them to run, they're going to continue to run. It's funny, John. Nowadays, in football, against these spread offenses, a lot of teams have started to, and it's really taken hold all across the country, drop 8 into coverage and say, listen, you're not going to throw it against us. So we'll leave 6 in the box, which leaves us shorthanded on defense if you run, but we're going to dare you to run. And I think when, if you give USC that option, they'll try to run. Most all teams will. Mississippi, all the teams that really want to throw it, they'll run it if you show them that. So it'll be an interesting matchup for sure. I think Brian Kelly has said more than once this year that he's got a very young team, and they're coming along incrementally. And for USC, the last 4 games have been under an interim head coach, Dante Williams, and the pattern is undeniable. The first game he got there, it was a big win on the road, came back home, got slaughtered, went back on the road, had a big win, came back home, got slaughtered. So it's been win-loss, win-loss. All the wins coming on the road at Washington State and at Colorado, maybe 2 of the lesser teams in the Pac-12, and the losses at home to Utah and Oregon State. So maybe they're happier being on the road. We'll find out.
Well, I'll tell you, they just pulled it up here in the database. USC is number 1 in the Pac-12, 448.2 yards of offense. And they do average 29 rushing attempts per game, which is much higher than I thought. And they gain 130 yards per game, 4.5 per rush. They run a ton of plays. They average 72 a game. So that is air raid, and then air raid. I could be wrong. I don't see this Notre Dame team through the same lenses as our good friend Steve. Well, with all due respect, I mean they may make me look foolish, but when you have an offense that is this potent and apparently finally getting their act together, and Notre Dame seems to be kind of regressing a little bit. I mean, it's there.
And I think Dave made another great point just from on the field play. The last couple of games, USC has shown more ability across their defensive front line to penetrate into the backfield, which was not present really at the start of the year. So maybe those guys are coming around a little bit. I don't know. Maybe Manny thinks so too. But USC is a funny team with the running stats, John. The overall stats may look halfway decent, but when you separate them out into games against the really, really good run defenses, they went nowhere. And against the mediocre defenses, they ran it a little bit. 29 carries per game indicates exactly what you and I were just talking about, is the fact that teams are going to drop 8 against that air raid and say, go ahead, USC. And so when it's shown to you, you have to at times go ahead and show them that you will run, and you're not Mike Leach and you're not going to throw 62 times and run 7. But, we'll see. Notre Dame hasn't been great on the run defensive side either. I think I saw 125 yards a game. It's not bad. It's but it's not less than 100 like a lot of teams across the country. So they lie somewhere in the middle here. But I just thought +7 is the great equalizer here. I could see Notre Dame winning the game, but USC would have to turn it over a bunch and allow Notre Dame. You were just going over yards per point statistics, and sometimes they can tell you a team scores 42 points and only gains 300 yards. Well, they had a bunch of short fields. So that low yardage number doesn't necessarily mean they're a great offense. It means their starting field position is pretty good. And if that happens here, Notre Dame covers. But I would take my chances with USC. Tony's got the best wager talk gear available to mankind. We get none of that. Oh, my goodness.
What's that?
I'm jealous as hell.
I know those hoodies. Every year when it gets colder weather and you come out with those nice wager talk hoodies, and, the rest of us.
Well, they give these out after you've been there for 10 years. Okay, 8.
Seniority.
No, these were thrown away. I just took them. They were thrown away, and I said, "Oh, can I have them?"
Seriously?
No, I'm not being serious. I'm BSing. No, these were.
I mean,
the president gave me these to me probably. These are a couple 3 years old. But I have some new stuff. Don't tell anybody. Anybody listening? Don't tell anybody.
Yep.
But I have a couple things in the works. They're not hoodies, although I think hoodies would be. I should add hoodies to it actually, because even here in the Mojave, it's not too bad right now. It's 70 degrees, but December is the coldest month for us. So we're getting close to it. November, December, January. Those 3 months they get down to 50, 45, and when it's down to 45 or 50 degrees here, with no humidity, it's a little chilly. You know that, Rob. You lived here.
Yeah, it was funny. When I first came there, coming from Connecticut, where it can be below zero in the winter, I would walk around in 50 in shorts.
Right.
And I would bring my kids to school, and people would look at me like, are you crazy? But you're right. As your body acclimates.
Yes, sir. That's right.
All of a sudden, 11 years later, I wasn't wearing those shorts in 45-degree weather anymore.
No.
11 years later.
No, I'm the same way. Exactly the same way. I worked here for 20 years. Before I lived here, and I've been here. We've been here 6-7 years, like full time. But even when I worked here for 20 years, I pretty much never. Well, 20 years ago, it was also easier to get from sportsbook to sportsbook. It's not easy anymore. It's not easy. You've gone from back when I was in college, and we used to grab the red eye out of Phoenix, come up here about 1 a.m. It was 4 lanes, strip of 4 lanes. You could jaywalk, and now it's 8 lanes on some parts of the strip. So, and walkways that you have to, you got to put a quarter in to get over the toll bridge. It's no fun. But when you live here, when I worked here, I would stay. They put me up. The company I worked for would put me up at Harrah's, is where I stayed, which I liked because Harrah's was really low key. And at that time, unless you went to the Hilton, Flamingo Hilton, the place that took the largest amount of money was the Mirage. Then you go to the Mirage Sportsbook, they take 5. They take 5 large in the game, which everybody says that's it. That's it. It's less than that in most places now. They don't across the counter is not where they want to deal with you nowadays. Listen, if you want, you can play more than that. Back then, the guy that I had a heavy hitter, and most places he had I did all his investing for it. I did a lot of the charts. Back, make a long story short, he had a 100K limit at most places. He could get down 100K, but you can't do that without having a relationship with the book.
It's a lot. Is that per game? I assume you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
That would get my attention.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of guys in, VR. When he was working down at, there used to be, before the internet was prevalent, more technology has eliminated most of the runners, et cetera, et cetera. They're still runners per se, but everyone, the syndicates are always a step. They try to be a step ahead, and for the most part, I'll tell you right now, they are a step ahead. They have 6 or 7 groups stationed everywhere, and they're all, timed like a Mission Impossible. And when that button hits, they're hitting every book at the same time. And anybody that wants to make an adjustment, and they do that now. I mean, a lot of times you see, I was just answering a question, guys, and Rob knows, books they're no longer standalones for the most part. Books are going to piggyback other books, and if a book gets hit hard, they're going to make an adjustment. They're not going to be that book that gets middled or lags behind and misses something. It's imaginary. Maybe it's just imaginary. An adjustment can be a lot of reasons. We all know what happens on Sunday mornings when a number is 7.5, might as well be 9.5. And for the most part, that's what happens. They don't want those teasers. They don't want to get buried with late teaser money. So, yeah.
It's quite an evolution, Tone.
It is.
You're bringing back some memories because I remember being in town, and I go back to
Stardust.
Visiting mid 80s, but living there in 91.
Yeah.
And in 91, it used to be more fun.
Yeah.
You could, I mean, the four-way between the Strip and Flamingo,
Yeah.
you could hit Bally's, Barbary, Caesars, and Dunes, the four corners right there. And we would run across the street and one right after the other. Nowadays, like you're saying,
the Dunes.
Yeah, the Dunes. How about
I
that?
used to listen. I used to invite my friends. That's where we would, when I'd work there, I would stay sometimes, and we would all stay at the Dunes. And what did we do? We played golf right there where the Bellagio is, golf course. Yeah, and we didn't.
Sounds like fun.
Either the Sands or the
Sands.
The Sands had those cabanas back there, right?
Yep. Yes. Oh, I've forgotten more than I remember. I'm certain. Because you're right. Even in 93, 94, that's when Rob, you were here. I was still working about 93, 94, right in there, is when the internet and when our 900, I had a 900 line as well. One of the companies I worked for, we had three of them. I had a $5, $25, $50 900 line. I had the $25 line, and we spent. I spent a lot back then. I still spent mornings in the Stardust, even though it wasn't what it used to be. Where that's where the book, that's where one of the guys that's still in business, his father would sell that, sell the numbers. The Stardust got his numbers first, there and off it went. Then the internet became prevalent, really in 93, 94. I'm saying it was long. It was here long before that, as I've talked about in the show. I can remember I happened to be a little bar in 1979, 80, 81, 82, right in there. And a guy, it was with a buddy of mine. We were drinking, trying to chase some girls back then. I would have been 21, I guess, then, 22. And a guy came and said, "Man, I just got my new Macintosh." And let me tell you, that was a big effing deal.
It was.
A big effing deal. So that's how far we've come. In my lifetime, we went from having no electricity to having electricity, or we probably could, if we really wanted to, having electricity without any lines. Electricity just we can project it, and it can flow, and we can pick it up, but we don't do that, obviously, because that Russian has long passed, and I don't know how much that secret he shared with you. That's another story.
No, but it's so true. When you talk about the limits that books will take, I mean, there were two independents back then, way back, Churchill Downs and Little Caesars, run by Gene Mayday. And Little Caesars was notorious for, you could walk in and whatever you had in your pocket, he would take. More than, the corporate buildings that were all around. But, of course, all good things have to get knocked down and turned into parking lots or other stuff. So
it's not the same. And listen, it's not for the better for someone like me, because people will say, "Oh, it's because you're old, and you don't like change." Well, both of those are true. I am old, and I prefer some things not change, but they do, And some people have only seen this. That's all they've ever seen, and it's big, it's pretty, it's sparkly, it's shiny. Freaks there, sideshow there. This is more fun I've ever had. So they like
They wound up running a lot of the really good sports book and race book directors right out of town because they were customer friendly. Yeah. And once customer friendly, they were told not to do that. I mean,
I told Las Vegas Chris the other day that I need to almost start over because everyone I knew in 90s, even in the early 2000s after 9/11, those guys aren't around. They're not there. There's no one here anymore. They're all new. A few of them are one that I haven't even talked to him probably in 10 years or longer. Is still operating, but he's off the strip. He's at South Point. So, but most of them are gone. You're right, Rob. They're just not. They're all new, and they've gone from being wise guy joints to a lot of them are wise guy joints to that transition period where they morph from being sole proprietorships or shack corporations that were still run by the wise guys to this corporate now. I mean, in truth, I don't I don't think it's any secret that we've gone from, wise guys who like to wear big diamonds and flash money around at the nightclubs to that those were the wise guys too, and there were not all of them were that way. I don't want to blanket everybody, but to they're just corporate wise guys now. They're just instead of being city mobs, they're corporate mobs. So that's what they are.
Yeah, because if I go back and I'm trying to think, the only guy I can think of, Tony, that's still relevant as a sportsbook director would be Jay Cornegay, who actually started at the Imperial Palace way back when. So for him to survive 90s, 2000s, now into the 20s, it's a long time. And Johnny Avello, but I think Johnny Avello's they ran Nick.
Guess what? Who's going to
Bogdanovich out of town?
I was speaking of Chris Andrews, and Chris Andrews is Chris Andrews is about my age.
Yeah.
And that's he's the guy that if I think about who's still working daily and actually hands on, would be Chris Andrews at South Point. But there's other guys, but the ones I knew, and I didn't have to know a lot of them. I only had to know a couple of them, and those two had information that I wanted from the other ones. So they would give it to me, and they knew they could trust that I wasn't. Not that they cared. Sometimes they didn't care, but sometimes they would share some information that they would prefer not be made public. At least not until game time.
Right.
Not until kickoff.
Chris Andrews, we're always, praying for his health, right? I mean, that poor guy has been through some stuff.
See, he's doing some stuff with Avisen. I think the Avisen really merged with somebody they're doing. I haven't followed him that closely, but I know that he's working pretty close. I think they do their broadcasts out of South Point, so it makes it pretty convenient for him to write some. This is a wise guy report, basically a sharp report that I get sent to me and I read. And understand his sharp report is based on South Point. It's not based on the entire network. So there are I might say something, somebody say that's not correct. And I say, well, it's correct in reference to what I'm speaking of. So,
Sorry, John, we strolled off there, John.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, that was very interesting. I was enjoying it.
There's a lot of people who'd like to know. I mean, a lot of people don't understand. Yeah. They don't understand the old workings. From the late 70s, even the 70s, in the 70s, late 70s, when I started doing this work and being out here part-time until full-time in the 80s, was the Stardust. There was no, it wasn't, you were at the Stardust. That's where the first lines were posted, and then somebody was on the phone, and the sportsbook boards would start lighting up down the strip.
Yeah, it was a different time. I mean, they'd line up in there on Sunday night at like 6 o'clock. I think they took the first 100.
Yep.
And you get the first shot at the numbers. Yes. It was a raffle. Hey, Brian Leonard, a colleague of ours, Brian Leonard, was involved in a lot of those where it's a 1 through 100 raffle, and whatever you draw, that's the position in line you get. And
you had to go back to the back line. You could pay
a couple of cracks, right, and then to the back of the line. Yep.
Right.
They weren't going to let you just stand there and keep pounding the same game. They wanted basically the sharpest guys in town to make the number for them.
Absolutely. And one of the guys, here's the deal. And if you read anything, if you can read between the lines, you don't have to read between the lines. The guys that do columns will write public or put some public of some of their knowledge on paper, on virtual paper, should I say. They want in truth, the sharps are who set the lines. They'll put a number out there, but it's all they want that sharps getting. They don't want to be. I think there was. I'll give you an example tonight, for instance. A lot of games are played with the sharps, and they know that. But a lot of times they'll put out some decoys, put out some feelers. They'll try to get a number. There'll be a 6, open a 6.5 or something, and they'll hit that 6.5 hard. Basically taking the 6.5, hoping that it goes down past 6, or they may hit that 6.5, hoping that the books will go ahead and move it to that 7, and then they'll hammer that 7 3 times as hard to hit 6.5. Right. Because how these numbers move, independents such as Chris Andrews, he'll look at he knows what's going on in the whole network and the whole our orbit, but he has the power to move the number anywhere, any number he wants. But these guys have a reputation, so it's not like going to play games. But groups play games all the time, trying to fake it. It's what is it? Fake right and go left.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's why I've said it before on this show. But when I came to town in 1991, and you're not as aware as you should be, you think you know sports, so you go bet, but you have to learn the intricacies of betting first. And I was lucky to have a few guys, but one guy told me, he said, if you want to stand there and bet line moves, every single line move, because you think it's right, then you'll be a 50-50 bettor your entire life. And then it was explained to me from there that on Sunday night, half of these line moves are really what these sharp bettors want to play, and half of them are just to have the public tail and drive the line to where they want it and come back twice as hard on Friday night, Saturday morning. Boom, boom, boom.
They're begging for steam. They're begging for that steam.
Yeah.
Hoping they lit the fuse. And sometimes it works. But they have the ability and the wherewithal. If they're going to play, go right or fake right and go left, they can get off of it. If if it doesn't work, they have the wherewithal to get off. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so which ones are right, and which ones are wrong.
I'll tell you I'll share this with you, and this doesn't make me right. It doesn't make it like I said, but the line moves I pay attention to that really pique me are at key numbers. I mean, when you see a 6.5 go to a 7, and then 10 seconds later or 15, a minute, 2 minutes later, it's back to a 6.5. There's guys out there just waiting. Basically, you'll see a lot. They'll teeter, go back and forth, back and forth. If you get two groups that are fighting against each other, you can't. It goes from 6.5, 7, 6.5, 7, and this is just two groups fighting, laying the wood, trying. They're waiting for the 7 to appear. They grab it. They wait for it to go back 6.5. The other group grabs it. And here's the line moves I like: is if it goes to 6.5, and it hits 7, and there's no buyback. And it goes to 7.5, and it goes to 8, then guess what? There wasn't not one sharp group out there that could have grabbed the 7 or 7.5, and they don't do it. Then there's no listen. There's not a large interest on that team that you've crossed over the 7, 7.5, and you'll see it. Sometimes it'll cross over both because of an injury or something. It'll go from 2.5 to 3. They announce an injury. All of a sudden, it goes to 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7. And if they're still not grabbing the 7, pay attention. Pay the F attention. Yeah.
Very, very true.
Yeah. So those are the ones that we had one this week, guys. And it is a absolute. I wrote a little piece on it for a friend of mine that wanted to publish something, and I just wrote a little paragraph. Basically, it was I'm going to speak to it. You guys already know about it, and that's the Falcons.
Right.
Yeah.
That line move listen, do not for 1 minute think that the public pushed that number that far, because it's not like it went from minus 2.5 to plus 2.5. It wasn't an adjustment. Look at the numbers, look at the time charts, the timestamps, half a point. It was a constant barrage. And the public it was Miami. It's Miami and Atlanta. These aren't two enormously public teams right now, So those are, which I find really interesting. And those are the kind of things that give us material to write about on Mondays. Look, here's a good example of a line move. 5 points, guys. 5 points. And the direction it moved was lost by 20. Those are the kind of things that are fun to write about. The thing is, if you react basically on one game, look, some guy says, "Well, You look at this move. This is a short money move. And the guy says, yeah, last week you said, well, it's just one game. It happens. Crap happens. So, but I think it's valid. I think that Miami losing to the Jags was a little bit. That's a little bit of an overreaction. All I read about was, boy, this Miami team sucks. They stink. They can't even beat the Jags. Well, first off, look where they're playing. And if you put too much weight on a game in London, then I want it to be a team that's played there every single year for 6 years straight. Look at their let me look at their history, and if they do something that's contrary to what they've done in the past, then you weigh some other things, measure twice and cut once. But other than that, I don't put a whole lot of weight on London games. Not me.
Yes. It's funny because I was telling John the other day, we were actually off air at the time, promoting what we had going. And I played a Sunday game on Monday, and it was the Atlanta game, and I played Atlanta. But I played it for the reason that I can't believe the NFL scheduled that poor team, Miami, the way they did.
Yeah.
Send them to London, make them come all the way back and play again. And on the other hand, give their opponent a bye week. So Atlanta's had 2 weeks to get ready. Jacksonville got the week off.
Yep.
But they didn't give Miami. Now, I understand that the schedule comes out in May, and Miami's known all along that this was going to happen to them. I mean, as soon as Brian Flores saw that schedule, he should have been PO'd. Why are you doing this to us? And they probably have tried to make accommodations to, get ready for this. But how do you get ready for that, Tony? You don't get ready for that.
Well, it's there's some hurdles and some obstacles, and you do what you can. You're right. But one of the things that the NFL does that prohibits them from being polite, let's use that word, polite, to every team, is that the way they do their scheduling, AFC East, AFC West, those kind of things, I'm certain that they tried to figure out some way for this not to be as it is for Miami, and we're handcuffed a little bit by that. Somehow, some way, somebody somewhere on that chain of one conference playing another conference, or one division playing another division, does to some degree. I don't think it's malicious, and I agree with you. Just happened. Miami got the wrong end of that one, and hey, listen, go win a Super Bowl, and I bet you don't get the wrong end of that.
I think I know why Jacksonville doesn't get the wrong end of it, because they offer to go to London every single year.
Yes, they do.
So they probably take care of those guys. Okay, thank you for being because so many other teams don't raise their hand to go to London. Nobody wants to go. In all honesty,
I don't. Listen. I don't think Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers are very excited about going to London to play football. They may want to go to London, but not to play football. Not with 54 other guys that they have to. That probably. They might like 5 of them, anyways.
Yeah, and their routines are so set in stone, and that just destroys your routine, big time, because of the time difference, obviously, and then coming back, So I'm sure they tried to figure out a way to handle it, but I don't know.
See, for me,
got the best of that.
For me, going to London would be where I don't handle time differences. It was always. I could always handle, like when I worked here for a week, I ended up driving more than I used to flying because I never handled coming back home from Vegas to Kansas City, even though it's a 2.5 hour flight. The time difference, it would just the first 2 days, just that 2.5 hours. Right. I was out of sync. Imagine that whatever it is, 5, 6, 7 hours difference. I think 7 hours from New York to London. I think it's something like that. 6, 5 or something like that. But that's there's lag. That they didn't make jet lag up. That word, that phrase, or that term didn't just appear out of. It's real.
It's real.
It's real. Yeah.
So
we're funny. Human beings are funny, fickle, funny. You think you're pretty tough. I always said I don't care about time difference. The hell do I care about time difference? I don't know what time it is, and I don't sleep anyway. That's what I used to tell people. I don't care. I give a shit.
Well, it's weird too when you go somewhere where there's extended daylight. Like I was in British Columbia years back. Took that ferry from Seattle into Canada, Western Canada. And it's light out until like 1:30 in the morning when you're supposed to be sleeping. And I know Alaska's even worse at times of the year, but
Yeah.
that was messing with me.
You think
like
that
crazy.
What time is it right now? What time does it get dark in Philly, in your area?
About an hour from now.
Yeah, about 6:30, we're done.
Okay, guess what time it gets dark here? You remember this? Winters here are the effing worst. At 4:30 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
it's almost dark because we're
Once
on
they
that.
turn the clocks.
Yes, the problem with we're on that kind of that real close to that, the divider or the line on between Mountain and Pacific, and listen. I love it, and in summer, dead of summer is the one thing I used to love about summer and still do is that where I grew up and where I lived a big part of my life, it didn't get dark till 9:30, quarter to 10 at night, 8 o'clock, 8:30 here, dark. I like it.
We're going to have it, John, because once they turn the clocks back, we're going to be
Yeah.
dark at 4:32. I don't like the winter here.
I hate it.
You look out the door.
I hate it.
Every night now, I'll say, what? It's only 8 o'clock. I feel like it's midnight.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
you're right.
Yeah,
And then you start, drinking earlier because it's dark.
right. That's right. Yeah. Well, that's the good part of that.
Well, who wants to go to
But,
bed at 9?
Who goes to bed at 9? That's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I know a lot of people want to. There's been times that I've been up for a couple of days, and I damn well want to go to bed at 9, but too much to do. Can sleep
the same. You
when
start
I'm
drinking
dead.
at 4 because it's
Yeah,
dark.
There's a solution to that. The same solution. The best cure for a hangover is what?
Quaaludes?
That's good. That's a good answer. Very good answer. It is a pretty good solution. But the best cure for hangover is more alcohol.
Oh, you got to pay the piper at some point. Finn,
Guess what? I'll pay him when I'm dead. I'll sleep when I'm
I
dead.
think the solution is to avoid getting one. That after your fourth
just quit
pint,
drinking.
you
Just quit drinking.
I mean that's impossible.
You're right.
You start drinking pints of water, and you alternate back and forth.
Right.
John, you know better than anyone here.
That's it.
How do you live your life? You
It's
live
an
your life.
MIT study.
You live your life how you live your life. This do everything in moderation.
Excessively. Yeah,
Perfect.
that's balanced then.
Exactly
Right?
I
I mean,
no argument from me. I'm in.
if you do drinking exponentially 2 times more than the average person,
Yes.
and you eat 2 times more than the average person,
Well, then you
you're
have
balanced.
You're balanced, but you probably have to do 2 more times. You probably have to do 4 more times the methamphetamines that they do. Just keep your metabolism a little high. All that
Yep.
food and alcohol,
Yeah, speeding tickets, same thing.
Yeah, right.
Man.
Yeah, I guess it's time for best show bets here.
What's the worst show bet?
My next move.
Yeah,
is
it's-
The worst show bet.
Yeah, who said that on one of the WagerTalk shows this week? Thank you. Well, what the hell? If you have a best bet, that means you got to have a worst bet.
That's right.
I think it was Marco on
Well.
bet on it. It was on bet on it.
That'll be your winner. Your worst
Or
bet.
VR. I think VR was saying it. It was pretty funny. VR said it.
Yesterday, I took a couple. I thought they kind of disappeared, but I get a constant reminder. We talked about I've been thinking about playing that under in that Vegas game, and
In the hockey game?
No, the Vegas UNLV San Jose State.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I talked about that, but I remember I asked Jesse the day before, or was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. I asked about what he was playing, or the other Tony, the New York Mets Tony, not the Yankees Tony, Mets Tony, was saying he was playing the under in the Cleveland game. And I said that's okay. Well, my fear, when you get games like that where you're getting a lot of backups and you think, well, the production's going to slow or be reduced, is you have mistakes in at UNLV game. I'm lucky. Listen, I'm fortunate that I still had a chance when the fourth quarter started. When they tied it up, we had a score with 6 seconds to go in the game. It was went to replay. The fumbles, the crap that happened in the game. I knew in the first quarter. I was thinking. I told Tony, I don't follow my own advice. and that is playing under in a game like that, even though it only ended at 47. It opened at a 46, I think, and went to a 43 or 44. I outplayed it at 44. Still only at 47 with all the short fields they had last night, and still only 47. That's some. It's life or it's football. The football guys kind of pat me on the head saying, "You're on the right play, you idiot. You just should have avoided this one. You even know why." So there you go.
It was like,
and I had Golden State yesterday up 19. I turn it off, and then they're down at half. They're up 19. They up 19 at the end of the first quarter, down at half, and I win by 2 because they can't get the rebound. If they get the rebound, they get fouled. I go to the line, I cover that.
Well,
I was laying straight.
Yeah, because
so those are the ones I know. Those come and go. What goes around comes around. And I guess I should feel lucky. I had Denver +4. A lot of people had Denver +2. And that game there, if they don't, here's the funny thing: we got these kind of stories all the time, right? Did you watch that game?
Yes, sir.
It's 4th and 1 or third. No, it's 3rd and 1. They get the first down. They get to take a knee for the rest. And then I come back to my desk. I sit down, and I hear the announcer saying, "Well, now they got 3rd and 7." I said, "Hold it, what?" I go back, and there was a damn penalty. Now I got to make a 3rd and 7, or they're going to take a field goal. And you know what happens? I lose.
Absolutely.
They made 3rd and 7 running the ball. That was a misdirection, a trap play, and they got the 7 yards. But damn. Well, you got to do that twice to get your win. So, you see, I think I got a break there, personally.
They're hard. Ski and I are texting back and forth last night.
The one word I try never to use during the day is deserve, because as soon as I use that word in reference to myself, something bad happens. So I always tell people, don't tell me you deserve. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. I'm begging you, do not say it, because as soon as you say you deserve something, life will show you what you deserve.
That's true.
So, there you go.
That is true.
That's
we had that Golden State total.
My best bet is take Denver. Make sure you get 4.
The Denver Nuggets?
So, who's your best bet?
No, you said you want Denver.
Oh, what did I do? Am I going to mute again? I can't hear you guys. John, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, no.
Up here, I'll get it. Let's see. No, he's
probably me.
Yeah. We'll wait till he gets fixed there. You want to do yours, Rob?
Sure, I'll go first.
All right.
I'll run right with one of the ones that I used on WagerTalk today, which was the San Antonio Spurs and Denver Nuggets. At the time, 219.5. Now we're looking at 221. So we're going to play it over 221. And it's early NBA. Obviously, you want to wait and see what a lot of these teams have. But in the case of these two, the personnel is basically the same as what they closed last season with. For San Antonio, small lineup, very small lineup, right 1 through 9 in that rotation, except for Pirtle at center. That's a small team. And it's, Popovich has changed the whole way about this team. It's built on guards and forwards who can handle the ball, who can score, and who can share the ball. Their opening game the other night, San Antonio had 7 guys score between 12 and 19 points. They take good shots. They're not a high-tempo team, but they're an efficient team. And the same could be said for Denver. Denver's not a high-tempo team either, but boy, they're an efficient basketball team offensively. Certainly nobody on that other side can handle Jokic. We know that. If you're looking at San Antonio, Tony Finn will know this. We've said it for 2 years now. If you're going to take advantage of Denver's defense, you got 2 options. You can take advantage of Jokic and pick and roll, or you can take advantage of Michael Porter Jr., however you want. So neither defense is really good here. San Antonio, it's not Popovich's old-time defense. It's definitely been – their whole system has been recreated here. lots of three-point shooting. Neither one defends the three-point arc real well. Neither one defended field goal percentage real well last year. They were both bottom 10. One ranked 21st, one ranked 22nd. They played each other four times last season. The game totals in three of those games were 240, 228, 258. All are well above what we're asked to do here tonight to get over 220 and a half, 221. And I think, it was asked to me by Teddy today on Wager Talk today, but Rob, don't you worry about the fact that DeMar DeRozan is gone and maybe some of the San Antonio offense went with that? And the answer to me for that question is that backcourt of San Antonio, Derek White and DeJounte Murray, probably spent a combined 45 games on the injured list last year. That backcourt was never intact. It was never healthy. It's healthy now. And they played like it the other night. So I think they overcome the scoring problems, or at least not problems, but loss of DeMar DeRozan. Same team to me. When you filled DeMar DeRozan's spot with Doug McDermott, who plays no defense but a lot of offense.
Yeah.
Dougie buckets. I just thought the level was low. I'll play over.
That would be my question. I've been watching. I'm glad you brought it up because I'll ask you, and that is, at one point in time last year, Popovich basically threw his hands in the air and said, "I forget it. I'm not going to play defense. These guys can't play defense." And if that was when we started playing, we started getting some favorable numbers on their totals when they met the right team, and at least I did, and caught quite a few San Antonio's over. But here's my question for you. And I like that play. Have you looked at did you look at you paid attention to Charlotte and what happened in that first game they played? And I guess the question in this game really is the status on the key player for me in this. I want to play a side on this, but my key player is Garland playing or is he not playing? I haven't questioned. I'm not getting a confirmation that he's in or out,
Yep, I see the same thing still. And it's funny because the NBA now gives us an hourly injury report. It's not.
That's right. Oh, I know. I know.
Every hour you can get it now.
Yeah.
But I still, before we got to the show, I hadn't seen yet on Garland. And that's, Tone, that's a game where one side has all the bigs, Cleveland, and should dominate. I think Jared Allen was 11 for 11 from the field the other night. And the other side has all the guards. What a game by LaMelo. But Ski and I were just talking about this on his show at 1:00 this afternoon. That Charlotte last year, boy, oh boy. I mean, I took a leap of faith and started playing Charlotte over. And it worked. You'll remember it because we did so many NBA tip-off shows together. And then they got injured. Terry Rozier got hurt. LaMelo went down. And the pace kind of stopped and they weren't an over team anymore. But that game against Cleveland the other night, 125, 123 or whatever it was.
Right.
The Charlotte game, I think they're a good look for an over.
Well, came in, the market came in really strong. It really pounded Indiana to the point where the Hornets went from being -2 to a +1 in that game, if you remember. By the time by the time tip off, and of course the Hornets, took a gun and put it to the head of those people who decided to bury Indiana. But really, here that was that 33-13 third quarter that really what did it, and they held on to win by one. I think it was 123, 122, something like that. But now Charlotte, they find themselves in the role of road favorite, and against the Cleveland team that is coming off about 11 or 12-point loss to Memphis. Now, Darius Garland, he's questionable. He's the one with the ankle injury, and he's the one that he's vital to the Cavs. If he's not playing, I want right now. I'd like to release Charlotte for a couple reasons, but I would prefer Garland not play, obviously. And
how about Rozier on the other side? Because
it's a concern too. It's a big concern. But the Pacers, the Hornets defense. I don't know if you looked at the metrics on that game, Rob. You may not have. We're in 2 days into the season, but the Hornets defense allowed the Pacers to attempt 24 3-pointers, 24 that were wide open, 6 feet or more away from the shooter. 24 3-pointers. And crazy. I think that's 1.5 points per possession is listen. There's some early metrics that I'd like to jump on, but also it can be a mistake. Basing a play on one game. So we'll see. But I was hoping you had an answer to that because I can't get it.
Yeah, I don't have the Garland answer. I'll tell you this: that metric you just gave us, where they weren't defending the 3-point line. Yeah. If that's the case tonight against a team that will clean their clock in the paint, I mean, Cleveland ought to score 75 points in the paint tonight if they score one against that team. I don't know how P.J. Washington and that front line is going to stack up against these guys. They got the Plumlee kid, and Plumlee looked lousy defending.
You couldn't be more right. Let's put it this way: if Garland's in, Cleveland's live. Mm-hmm. They're live for me. Live. If Garland's out, then it's funny how a guy can teeter-totter right between one side or the other on one player, but that's how I feel about this game.
That's the NBA. That's the NBA. That's the NBA every night.
Wow.
Every night.
I sent a little tweet out. Did you see my tweet? Some guy was saying, well done, Tony, on the double overtime winner in the opener. I put out it a week ahead of time on I like the Knicks over the Celtics, right? A lot it had to do with all the COVID crap that was going on with them and the way that the new coach was handling the lineup. And I told him, I just wrote on there, I said, well, I thought it was a dead winner. Then we're up 9 with about a minute and a half to go, and then it's in overtime. And I said, it all comes back. It just all came back to me. This effing NBA. Wow. In the last 2 years, you guys know. I mean, 22, 23, 20. I had a 26-point lead in the third quarter, in the middle of the third quarter in the game, and lost.
They disappeared.
Last year. 26-point lead, middle of the third, and essentially a pick'em game, and I lost. So those hurt. Those are painful. They're painful. They're painful. I don't mind losing. It's just, how did I lose, and how can 5 professional basketball players let that happen to them?
Yeah. When you're watching those types of games and they unfold, it's incredible to see how inept one side suddenly becomes. It's crazy. It really is crazy. I remember a Denver-Boston game happened in that way last year, too, in Denver. It's just nuts. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
It was over 221, and I got lost in the conversation. What was the game?
It was San Antonio-Denver.
San Antonio-Denver, yep.
Pacers lost that game. Hornets didn't win it. Rozier shouldn't come back for this game if he's not ready. Because of
what show were you doing? What show were you doing with Ski? You don't
Ski? No, he's got his own show.
Okay.
Every day, Spotify show. So we were in there today.
Is it a WagerTalk show?
No, just his.
Okay.
He hosts it.
Okay. Because I was I'm only on the NBA show once right now. It looks like I'm only on once a week. So. But there's a lot. I like doing the show simply because of the things it makes me stop. It makes my head stop spinning, which is what it does for most of the day, and it makes you think a little bit. So I always enjoy doing the show because I like listening to you guys. But it's only been one game. I don't want to jump off the roof on it. But let me tell you something right now. Also, I really like Dallas, and it's all come back to me. Rob, it's all come back to me.
Yep.
How bad Jason Kidd was as a head coach with Milwaukee.
It wasn't pretty last night.
I don't know if you know.
They got crushed.
I went back and looked at the metrics. Went back to the archives, or somebody who had done them. I don't remember what site I was looking at, but because I didn't have them, and I don't plan on keeping them. But for the most part. In Milwaukee, he never, and I look every year, he never finished better than 14th in net rating, and it was 18th or lower in defensive efficiency in 3 of his seasons in Milwaukee, a record 139, 152 overall. Those, I love Jason Kidd as a player, but it's all coming back to me, and I remember many, many times saying, it's Milwaukee, like Milwaukee, but we'll fade them. We'll win. We did.
I think Robbie had to leave.
Oh, that's too bad. But Rob, see you later, buddy. And Johnny.
Well, he's got that. He's got that 5:30 gig. Remember?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He doesn't even say bye.
Yeah,
he's like.
well, that's all right.
He doesn't say anything. So what was your? So did you have a best bet? I've been talking.
Well, one of the Rob Elias here in the chat room wanted me to do some live pregame planning for live betting on a game.
All right.
And I'm actually going to pick the Sixers.
Okay.
And this has nothing to do with the rumor that I'm a homer.
Okay. That's a nasty rumor.
For show purposes, I'll actually do two quick ones.
All right.
Let's look at the Sixers hosting the Nets tonight, because that game is going to have swings. And line opened at roughly 230, now down to 226. Embiid's right knee is sore already.
Yeah.
And I do say already because it's game one, and he's a tremendous athlete, but he's never finished a season. He missed a lot of games last year, and I guess he is playing tonight, but I think that's why you're seeing the underdrop. But I actually like the over here because there's a guy named Tobias Harris, and I would play a prop bet of him over his points, whatever that is, and I will write that down. Right. Points, assists, rebounds. Tobias Harris. Over, points, rebounds, assists. So now in game we're going to play over the total of I believe it's 226 now, Finn.
Right.
So we're going to play 50% of our disciplined amount. Like if you bet $100 a game, put $50 on right now, and we'll call it 226. Now, in this game, there's a high probability that both teams are going to rip off 10 or more consecutive points without the opponent answering. So when that happens, you want to take the opposite team. So if Brooklyn goes on a run of 10-0 or greater, it usually leads to a timeout and a commercial and gives you plenty of time to get that live bet in. And you would do that with the Sixers. Now, in the totals, the game will see periods of time where they're scoring 8 points a minute for 3-minute periods, bursts, and you'll see times where it'll be under 4 points per minute for 3 minutes. So I know it's hard to monitor, but I have a pretty good head from what they tell me. So when it gets to be, since we're betting the over, we want to identify those times where bricks are being shot up, the play is not lethargic, but it's slowed down. Maybe there's fouls being called. But whenever you see a period of a minute and it's under 4 points, and it goes for 3 consecutive minutes, then that's a bet on the over. And only for the first and second quarter. You can't do in-game third and fourth quarter because you run out of time. Your window is so small to be right that it doesn't pay off. I've proven that statistically. So first quarter especially, you get those slow periods where I would even consider 5 points in this matchup or less would be for 3 minutes would be reason to bet the over. I also would do a plan for show purposes here. Since it's pretty hard for people to follow me when I'm doing it by minute. Since it's 226, if it slows down, you're probably going to be able to look at 217.5 and then 213 or 212.5 would be the numbers. And that's based on implied volatility, which is a method used that I learned on Wall Street to evaluate option volatility. In other words, how much is that underlying stock going to move up and down over the next, whatever time period you're looking at. So implied volatility here is for the 48 minutes.
Right.
So those are the numbers that come up. So you would bet pre-flop 226 and then in-game at 217.5 or 25, 212.5, 25, and only applies to the first half. So that's my free pick for the show. I'll let the Lakers game go.
Two plays. One is I was going to talk to Rob more about it because I agreed wholeheartedly with his assessment of this. I'm a little bit infatuated with the Charlotte and Cleveland game because I've spent so much time on it, but I'm just going to stay with there's a player prop. It's a little bit juicy. Last time I looked, it's already minus 125, 130 right in that area, and probably going to climb. Jared Allen over 12.5 points.
I like it.
Minus 125 or minus 130. I got that. I got 125 at Penny on that.
And what was the points over?
12.5.
12.5. Yeah.
12.5 points. Yeah. And we're going to move to college football, and it did not. There wasn't a bunch of buyback on it, so I'm comfortable with laying. I've got Colorado State -3 tonight on the road. And they're playing a Thursday night game. It's Mountain West in Utah at Logan, at Utah State in Logan.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I like that play too, Finn. That's yeah.
Colorado State. I like their coach. He's pretty hard nosed and pretty serious, but they always get better as the year goes along. And if it's this time of year too, they're always typically a pretty good play, especially more at home. They're on the road. They just happen to be on the road tonight against a Utah State team that will get worse as the weather gets worse because they throw the ball. They're essentially an air raid. Even more, they're just a sling and gun and shoot. So we go.
I like that program. Colorado State actually was my first ever 10-unit release, and you know how much I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I just don't want to, have somebody misunderstand what it is. It's not.
Well, they will.
And I try. My first paragraph is basically telling them, okay, well, these plays, they have hit at 70%, but that doesn't matter because they've lost 30% of the time too.
Yeah. And I
wish I could do my promo like that, but I wouldn't be allowed to.
You see, that's different.
I don't think.
The difference than I run. Highest play I make is a 5. And I always tell people, just remember, it's the highest play that I'll lay out or I'll recommend. It's only 1% more than 4. So don't just because it's gone from a 4 to a 5. You have to follow the discipline or the money management. So, but there's always going to be people like me who don't listen to other people and do what they want.
Well,
and suffer the consequences.
I think you have a good play though with Colorado State because I had them as my first 10-unit play against Iowa.
Oh,
and they were winning 14-7 at the half, and that was my first confirmation that Iowa was not who we thought they were.
No. Special teams with Colorado State, I'll mention to you too. They have a punter who's NFL ready. He's already had them this year, but he always has 1 or 2 a year 80-yard punts because he just hits one.
He kicks it into the stratosphere too. I mean, it's
right, and it's always nice to be able to kick in the elevation too. But he had one 81 yards last week, 81. So. Right, that'll change. That'll flip. It'll flip a little field advantage there for you. Okay, Johnny, that's what I got.
All right, man.
All right.
Yeah, you too. I'll sign us off here. So thanks for your time. Good luck this weekend.
Thank
you. On behalf of the people who power us at WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com, may all the wins be yours. Let's go undefeated this weekend.